Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Hyperlocal Fulfillment 101, Permanent Changes in Buyer Behavior. This is the fourth and final webinar in our series, and we are excited to wrap up with such a relevant and important topic impacting many supply chain professionals. I'm Stephanie Hardy, Marketing Manager at Bastian Solutions, and I will be your moderator today. Before we get started, there are just a couple announcements. First, we will have a live question and answer session following today's presentation, but you may submit a question at any time through the event Q&A window found on the right of your screen. Click the My Questions tab and type your question at the bottom of the window where you see Ask a Question. We will address as many as we can at the conclusion of the presentation. If you'd like to revisit today's webinar, it will be available on the Bastian Solutions website approximately 24 hours after this live event. You will also receive an email from us with a link to the recording. All right, now let's move on to the presentation. Discussing today's topic will be Alex Haines. Alex is a business development consultant working with customers across various industries, looking for opportunities to help clients automate their supply chain to address both the pain points and opportunities posed by rapidly changing consumer demands. Alex is responsible for hyperlocal fulfillment automation strategy and relationships with key customers and technology partners. He has 13 years of experience in logistics and supply chain with roles in operations, finance, account management, and new business development. Thank you for joining us today, Alex.
Well, thank you for the introduction, Stephanie, and for the time today to discuss hyperlocal micro-fulfillment. So before we dig into content, I'd like to start by level setting what we're going to discuss today. First of all, it's important to understand how changes in consumer buying behavior have created a fundamental shift in supply chain fulfillment strategy. Consumer buying behavior has changed dramatically in e-commerce, buy online, pickup in store, and the in-store itself shopping experience. So understanding these changes will help explain why fulfillment strategy needs to evolve. With this evolution, there are many common challenges which are good to discuss as they drive the need for creative solutions. Then we'll discuss how this supply chain evolution has created the need for hyper-local fulfillment, which also comes with its own challenges. Finally, we'll take a look at solutions to resolve these challenges and help prepare you for the evolution in future omni-channel distribution. Okay, let's get started. So it's commonly understood that e-commerce demands continue to grow. We all know that. But let's begin by understanding customer expectations. I'd like to start our conversation by quickly reviewing the three main purchasing channels customers use and the rapid changes to each of these channels. So we're going to talk about e-commerce, buy online, pickup in store, and the in-store shopping experience. First of all, e-commerce. So what do customers expect? At a high level, it's obvious, but let's get into some details and talk to some data points. First of all, free or low-cost shipping. So according to Chain Storage, 54% of shoppers abandon their carts due to expensive shipping, while 39% abandon their carts due to no free shipping, and 26% abandon their carts due to slow shipping. It's a huge driver of decision-making. The next, fast receipt of product, same or next day shipping. Next day or 2-day shipping means order fulfillment needs to happen same day from the fulfillment center or the next day upon order placement. While 2-day receipt of product has obviously become the norm for most of us, same day and even 1-hour shipping in dense urban areas is becoming more of an expectation. Next, free, no hassle returns. So customers expect products to arrive with either pre-printed return labels, prepaid return labels with the ability to easily print off a prepaid return label, or easy or quick access to a return center. So UPS and retail stores such as Kohl's have become return centers for products that are purchased online. Using these return centers free of charge is an incentive for customers as well as a cost reduction move for sellers. They also expect no hassle, no questions returns, of course within reason. What else? Inventory in stock. So if a product's on back order, customers are much more likely to purchase from an alternate online retailer if possible and at the same price. Consumers have multiple e-com channels for same or like products. Excellent customer support. So if customers have an issue, they expect the same type of service they would receive in store. Online reviews of poor customer service can be detrimental to an e-tailer. Secure transactions. Identity theft is a major concern as well as violation of privacy. And let's talk about COVID impact for a couple of minutes. Since COVID, according to Forbes, it has massively accelerated the growth of e-com. I think most of us have witnessed that firsthand. But to put some data behind it, total online spending in May hit $82.5 billion, which is up 77% year over year. According to their data, it would have taken between 4 and 6 years to get to the levels that we saw in May if the growth continued at the same levels as it was for the past few years. We typically don't expect to see surges at this level at any time outside of the holiday season. So for context, last year's holiday season drove $142.5 billion from November 1st to December 31st, and that was a 13% year over year increase. Overall, e-commerce jumped $52 billion. So if you're selling online, there's a good chance you're feeling the impact of COVID. Next, buy online, pick up in store, also called BOPIS. So prior to COVID, customer adoption of BOPIS was increasing rapidly. Look, if customers don't want to pay for shipping or wait on product, they want the ability to buy online and pick up in store quickly. Most customers want to pick up their product same day or many times within an hour or hours. This means you need to have product in stock and the ability to quickly allocate and access it. The following statistics tell the story pretty well. 68% of US consumers have made multiple BOPIS purchases. 50% of shoppers said they've decided where to buy online based on whether or not they could pick up their orders in store. The most popular reason that shoppers gave for using BOPIS was saving on shipping costs, with 48% of participants citing it. Beyond shipping savings, speed, 39% of respondents, and convenience, 28% of respondents, were the two most cited factors for using BOPIS. 85% of shoppers say they've made an additional in-store purchase while picking up an online order, and 15% say that they do so somewhat frequently. Since COVID, curbside demand has surged exponentially. BOPIS was up 195% in May. The percent of top 500 retailers with stores offering curbside pickup in December of last year was 6.9%. In August of this year, 43.7%, a huge increase in retailers offering this service. According to Mercatus, as of August, 75% of BOPIS delivery grocery customers plan on using the service again. In the grocery space, according to Bricks Meet Clicks, customers are buying more and ordering more frequently. The average order volume for online grocery pickup and delivery increased to a record high of $95, which is 32% higher than a year ago. And active online grocery shoppers placed 1.6 orders per month compared to 1 order in August of last year. They're more committed. The intent to make a repeat purchase in the next month with the last service use just reached 75%. This level of repeat intent is a significant improvement from June, highlighting how improved retail conditions are leading to stronger shopping experiences and a much larger base than a year ago. Approximately 37.5 million, or 29% of all US households, are considered monthly active users of these services in August 2020, compared to only 16 million 1 year ago. It represents a 133% increase in the number of active households placing at least one delivery or pickup order during the past month. So let's talk about timing. 5 to 15 minutes. That's the average time from when a customer notifies a retailer they're leaving for pickup until store arrival. In order to meet this requirement, sellers need to have orders pre-picked and staged and/or have the ability to rapidly pick orders. Many customers expect pickup availability within 1 hour, like we said earlier, again driving the need to pick orders quickly. Demand surges after 4 p.m. So during the commuter drive home and pickup, when combining the short order prep time with the commuter demand surge, the influx of demand at this time can put significant stress on a store's operation. So overall, this means you need to have product in stock and the ability to quickly allocate and access it. Let's talk about the in-store experience. So traditional in-store sales, customers expect stores to have product in stock and at the same price as online competitors. Customers are going to look at product in store and buy it online if the price is lower and free shipping is guaranteed. We know how that happens. I've done it. Many of you have probably considered it or have done it as well. So what does that mean? It means you need to have inventory in stock or available next day or within 2 days, shipped direct to your customer at no additional cost. It also needs to be price matched to competitors. According to BRP Consulting, 63% of consumers use their phone for research while they're shopping in stores. Customers are increasingly demanding an engaging experience from their in-store shopping. If they go to a store instead of purchasing online, they're looking for personalization and or an overall positive experience. Basically, they don't want shopping to feel like a chore. According to BRP Consulting, 79% of consumers want personalized service from an associate, and 56% of consumers want a shared cart across channels. So for example, putting something in your cart on your desktop and having it show up on your phone. And according to Retail Wire, 80% of consumers do not feel they're provided with a personalized shopping experience, both in-store and online. The majority of consumers, 53%, said they felt negative emotions the last time they visited a store. Only 39% feel confident in retail stores today. That's a concerning metric. Customers are demanding a clean shopping experience, both from a health standpoint, but also from an aesthetic standpoint. Customers are drawn into a clean, decluttered stores and have ample lighting, space, and an open feel. Think of an Apple store and the experience you have when entering. It makes you feel like you want to purchase products. It's well lit, it's clean, it's open, they have large screens on their walls, places to play with their gadgets, devices, sit, talk, etc. These concerning statistics should cause us to consider what shoppers really want from an in-store experience. Okay, so what does an in-store experience look like? We'll get to some potential ideas a little later. As a result of these customer buying behavior changes, fulfillment strategies are evolving. Let's discuss the evolution from traditional fulfillment to what is rapidly becoming the expectation for future omni fulfillment. Traditional retail fulfillment focuses on distribution centers fulfilling retail stores via pallet and case shipments. For decades, this enabled relatively efficient DCs as pallet and case picking allowed for efficient and effective outbound processes. This model was predicated on relatively consistent demand from stores and could deal with some fluctuations to inbound and outbound volume, with a key focus on holiday season, but with significant preparation for that peak. The evolution to omni-channel distribution was driven by the growth in e-commerce. The consumer buying behaviors we discussed previously have driven substantial changes to the way orders are fulfilled to various end users. So let's take a look at this a little more. The complexity began to increase rapidly in the following ways in the omnichannel world. Broken case shipments increased as retailers purchased smaller quantities of product. DC to end user each shipments, so individual unit shipments, was a new concept and began rapidly increasing as customers demanded product quickly from online purchases. The DC to end user also drop ship eaches on behalf of retailers. As retailers struggled to keep up with demand, they would ask brands to drop ship individual orders on their behalf to fulfill their customers' needs. Then DC to store. So in addition, the DC is still shipping to its store. It's providing the traditional case and pallet shipments that are still a large key component of the fulfillment practice. Then also, BOPIS began to create unique fulfillment requirements in the store. So customers have begun transitioning, and many have transitioned successfully to omni-channel distribution centers. But let's look at the future omni strategy, which is driven heavily by the in-store fulfillment. So future omni describes what's rapidly becoming an expectation for retailers, brands, and grocers. Complexity is now the norm, and multiple consumer buying channels have dramatically changed the way fulfillment strategy is rapidly evolving. So on the e-com side, DC to end user each shipments, those unit shipments, as we discussed earlier, are rapidly growing. So the DC continues to ship to end users. In this, as well, like I mentioned, brands drop ship eaches on behalf of the retailers. And this has increased exponentially as many retailers are not able to keep up with the warehousing and fulfillment capacity to support each shipping from their e-commerce sales directly to customers. So what do? They send it back. They send the fulfillment back to the brand so that they can ship to that end user, creating much more stress on that brand's fulfillment strategy and supply chain. The DC to store. Now we're looking at pace, pallet plus case shipments, plus split case shipments, plus more frequent replenishments to fulfill these increased BOPIS and e-com ship from store to end users. And there's a massive increase in the end user BOPIS curbside delivery and e-com ship from store to end user. Just like we talked about, all of these products are turning the traditional retail store into a fulfillment center. DC and stores are both shipping e-com eaches directly to end users. So distribution centers are shipping their each units directly to a customer, but also having their stores do the same thing. And reducing this overall shipping from stores is a key component of a future strategy, as this reduces shipping time and final mile delivery cost. Okay, so obviously it's relatively complicated. Let's take a look now at what are the common pain points for these retailers, brands, and grocers. So the shift to future omni is accelerating rapidly since COVID, like we talked about. Pallet and case shipping has become the past, and pallet plus case plus high volume each shipping is the norm. Common pain points for retailers, brands, and grocers at the DC level include increased shipping costs. So shipping each is direct to customers, shipping drop ship direct to customers on behalf of retailers, and standard box sizes are now many times oversized for the smaller quantities that are being shipped, resulting in excess transportation costs. Increased labor cost. So this immediate customer demand for same day or next day increases pick, pack, and ship labor across the supply chain, very heavily focused on the DC. Late cutoffs. Customers placing orders close to cutoff drives need for additional pickers to pick orders last minute. Split case picking and each picking. That's increasing the picking labor. Not batching due to discrete order picking and the way that order profiles are received by customers is increasing labor. Packaging. So all these additional each shipments in increased split case shipments means more labor to package all of these goods. And it's hard to find labor. We all know it. It was difficult before COVID, and it's still difficult to find good labor. SKU proliferation. So customer demand for variety and personalization continues to grow. What does this mean? It means less space. Warehouses are running out of space to store, and continued SKU growth. It's more difficult to manage this inventory across the overall supply chain. So COVID-19's impact. This showed the need to be nimble and quick to pivot fulfillment strategy. We've heard from some of our customers on a fulfillment side that they say every day is Black Friday. And we're noticing that buyer channels are shifting quickly. So in-store to BOPIS to e-com, like we talked about, and comments from our customers saying that the buying channels from traditional retailers shifting back to brands is happening overnight. So you need to be able to pivot quickly to these drop ships and these retailers that are either unable to keep up with the demand if you're a brand or if they're going out of business. Losing money on more transactions. The loss leaders, which typically drove overall sales, are now becoming more of a problem if each shipping increases on these. So let's take a look at the common pain points on the store side. So at the store and local level, increased e-commerce orders shipping from the store. So what does that mean? Customer e-com orders that were previously shipping from the DC to customer are now shipping directly from the store to the customer. Many retailers are now shipping more e-commerce orders from their stores instead of their DCs. This results in increased picking labor at the store level. It also creates staging and buffering order areas for shipment. Space and organization are required to stage picked orders prior to pickup and delivery. Inventory storage shift from the DC to store, or a combination of both. As more orders come out of the local store, that inventory needs to be allocated much more scientifically between the DC and the store and on a really planned and regular basis. So overall, there's more customer demand on the store. This e-com demand shifting from DC is an additional volume on top of your in-store and increased BOPIS demand. What else? Customer requirements for 1-hour delivery or pickup. Managing the surge we talked about, especially after 4 p.m. and with 1-hour notification prior to pickup. Even with manual labor, it's difficult to have an efficient pick path in a store for associates to pick multiple orders within these tight windows. And it makes it really difficult to batch pick. It forces discrete order picking, which is much less efficient and much more costly. So the increased buy online, pickup in store, and curbside. Remember the statistics earlier? Retail stores essentially were acting as small fulfillment centers for years and years and years. Customers essentially were their own associates, picking their own goods. But that's changing. Retail stores are becoming like small distribution centers, with picking labor shifting from customers to paid associates. This is turning the business model upside down and making it much more costly. Now you have store associates picking for both e-com delivery orders as well increased BOPIS. So these store associates who were traditionally focused on fulfilling smaller drive-up orders are now fulfilling exponentially more than they used to, driving traffic and driving additional cost. Third-party shopping services are consuming the customer base in the on the grocery side. So customer loyalty with traditionally had to a traditional grocer is shifting to the shopping provider, for example, Instacart. Crowded aisles with third-party shoppers. We've all seen it, but that's not a good in-store experience. and that's what customers are asking for. Losing money from outsourced manual picking. The grocery store, like I said, is moving to this a paid associate warehouse, and overall transactions are losing money, breaking even, or making very low margins. So if not using existing retail space in order to meet these requirements, there are additional fulfillment real estate in high cost metro areas. If you don't have space for a fulfillment center that's local and you're looking for ways to more efficiently serve your customers, you need to find expensive real estate. But if you do have existing store real estate, what space are you going to be sacrificing to offer these additional fulfillment services? There's always a cost of fulfilling more out of a store. Additional inventory closer to the customers. Again, the requirement to store additional inventory closer to these customers drives increased requirements. Where are you storing this material? Or are you making up for it with increased DC to store shipments? Maybe your transportation costs are increasing. So those are the challenges posed. But to address these pains, many retailers, brands, and grocers are shifting to automation to support hyper-local micro-fulfillment. So micro-fulfillment automation is a system that holds inventory and creates a centralized location for associates to pick goods out of the system instead of moving through the store to pick. This is called goods to person. So let's take a look at the concept and ROI drivers that rationalize these decisions. So what is this concept? So a micro-fulfillment center can serve several stores in the surrounding area. These stores communicate with each other to fulfill orders. It's a really good business case in dense urban areas. So for example, one micro-fulfillment center, or MFC, can perform milk runs for multiple stores in the surrounding geo. So one store that has back of store or dark store automation can hold inventory for a few stores in the surrounding urban area. This store can serve to supply inventory for regular milk runs to these other stores, supplying them with replenishment inventory at lower delivery costs. The MFC can also fulfill e-com orders, delivery orders for the surrounding geo, instead of each store fulfilling e-com orders directly. Think of it as a centralized, localized e-commerce distribution facility. So back of store or dark store automation. I hinted at this on the last slide. But back of store are really smaller scale than a dark store, but lower implementation cost. A dark store can hold more inventory and provide more direct shipments. A dark store, though, is essentially a small fulfillment center with no outside shopping activity from customers, while back of the store is a traditional store with a traditional in-store shopping experience supplemented by back of store automation. So what are the ROI drivers for this to make sense? Well, they reduce final mile delivery cost, shipping more e-com from a store instead of shipping more from the DC. You can fulfill orders faster and reduce the picking labor. Store inventory in an automated solution, and you can pick orders quickly and in order of priority. You can meet the 1 hour demand surge during peak. You can pick the 1 hour orders quickly and with priority over other orders if necessary. You can buffer picked orders in the system for pickup later. You can minimize real estate cost investment. You're using existing store space. You can increase your retail floor space. You can display more SKUs with inventory stored in automation, not in the shopping area. Overall, this will help you improve the customer in-store buying experience and help you create that experience they're looking for. Fulfill e-commerce and BOPIS orders profitably. You have the ability to keep pace with rapidly growing SKU offerings. A dense storage solution allows for the ability to hold more SKUs in a small space. Customer self-service and after-hours pickup. So this concept allows customers to self-serve BOPIS, thereby reducing labor costs further. And we'll give you a concept here in just a minute. So what are the key considerations? Out of all of the slides in the deck, I'd like to call the most attention to this slide. So when considering back of the store or dark store automation, there are key considerations that need to be evaluated to determine the appropriate solution and the sizing. So if you are considering micro-fulfillment automation, here are the things I'd like to call your attention to as key considerations. First of all, inventory days on hand. Inventory days on hand directly influences the size of your automation, the storage requirements, and your replenishment strategy, which we'll talk about next. This replenishment strategy from the DC. So managing overall inventories and turns at a network level to minimize inventory carrying costs while ensuring high customer service levels. You need to determine how often you can replenish your network to maximize DC to store shipments, reducing freight, but keeping enough in stock to service those e-com, BOPIS, and in-store orders. So the question to ask is, Are the DC supply chain strategic decision makers communicating with supply chain strategic decision makers at the store level? The key to ensure the DC fulfillment planning decision makers are communicating with these is to make sure that your replenishment strategy is streamlined between the DC and the store. And we've seen that many retailers have different supply chain decision makers or supply chain strategies overall for their retail, their store side, and their DC channels, essentially operating in somewhat of silos. But to ensure a successful micro-fulfillment strategy, it's critical these two channels are effectively communicating the fulfillment and replenishment strategy. Another question, is your DC increasing stocking rules post-COVID? Also, maybe you're holding more inventory at the store level for these increased orders and for the demand surges for unknown supply chain disruptions in the future. Peak week and peak day considerations. So this is going to drive the sizing of your automation. What are you planning to? Are you planning to your peak week? In grocery, do you plan to Thanksgiving week, or do you treat it as an outlier and manage it manually? Or maybe you design to peak day instead. What's your IT strategy? Do you need a full warehouse management solution for your back of store requirements? Or maybe you can use automation to simply act as an automated storage retrieval system or as an order buffering system. What's your available space in a back of store? This is a critical one. What's your clear height? What are the existing building considerations? Do you have support columns? Do you have odd store layouts that need to be considered? How about automation, uptime, and serviceability? This is very important. So for back of store applications, do you assume you'll have someone technical on site who can troubleshoot, or do you need to call service every time something happens? High uptime is going to be key when you won't have technical support on site. How easy is your automation to manually, quickly service? How many points of failure does it have? Next, the OpEx and appropriate ROI. Automation must be cost efficient. The technology must be able to scale down to a small back of store applications for it to make sense. Also, the customer experience. The time from the order placement to ready to ship. Does your automation have a wow factor for customers? Can customers see your automation in store that will drive them to come back into the in-store? SKU proliferation. Will you continue to grow your SKU base? Can you plan for storage of these additional SKUs in the back of store with your automation? And finally, in the grocery space, have you considered your ambient versus chilled strategy? Does it make sense to automate chilled? Maybe you just start with ambient first. Maybe you should evaluate independent ROIs for both of these. There are many things that need to be considered as you take a look at automation. So we thought of the key considerations. Now let's talk about the requirements for successful micro-fulfillment automation. Once you've evaluated them, here are the key considerations. Small scale, dense storage. So the automation needs to be able to scale down in order to fit in back of store or a dark store in odd, small spaces and at low cost. But it also needs to be flexible with various store layouts. Automation should be able to be implemented in both old and new store layouts. The ability to create a standard solution that also has the ability to implement in various layouts is important. You need turnkey installation. This must include everything required to store and fulfill customer orders upon your go live. It needs to be designed, it needs to have hardware, software, installation, commissioning, and support. It needs to be multi-site deployable. So it's got to be repeatable, it's got to have a fast installation, it needs a strong ROI per install, and you need standardized software. Also, you need high uptime, as we mentioned earlier. You want to work with somebody who's experienced from an integration and installation standpoint, and they know how to install efficiently and effectively for multiple site deployments. And as a bonus, the engaging customer experience, the ability for customers to witness the automation in action. So we come to the point as an independent integrator where Bastian has implemented various goods-to-person technologies. After careful consideration, we determined we needed to choose a primary goods-to-person for micro-fulfillment applications in order to create a standard hardware and software solution that could be quickly and reliably deployed across multiple sites or stores at lower cost. After reviewing various technologies, we chose AutoStore for the following reasons. It has the highest density automation of any of our systems. Cube-based system maximizes density. AutoStore was designed around the principle of density. It was designed in Europe where space is a premium. The fundamental concept was to store as much inventory as possible in a small space. This concept is realized by stacking layers of bins on top of each other from the floor. And this concept proves critical in the back of store or dark store MFC channel where space is extremely limited. High uptime, 99.6% and no single point of failure. Unlike a large DC, each store is unlikely to have a dedicated maintenance resource available to support emergency maintenance needs. Each port has access to 100% of the SKUs, and every system we install will have at least 2 ports for redundancy. Overall, the simplicity of the design. Bins are stacked on the floor, and the robots run on basic mechanical principles. If a robot fails, the system doesn't stop. It works around it. The real complexity for the technology is in the software, which is supported remotely, not locally. AutoStore also is flexible for any small dark store or back of store layout. The grid can fit into any space layout, working around building columns, around corners, etc. And the ability to expand easily in the future. If you're going to grow, you can expand your system quickly and easily. Proven technology. With 22 years of experience and over 500 installations globally, the technology has been proven to scale up and down very efficiently. A strong ROI. So that simple design equals lower cost. The system consists of basically an aluminum frame, plastic bins, robots, and ports. That's about it. It enables a quick installation. So after your IT interfaces are built, you set up your frame, your ports, you feed the bins to the system and your robots, you test your IT, and then you launch. And overall, we know this is true because Bastian Solutions has implemented 33 AutoStore systems. So a few more points and additional information on AutoStore's advantages for microfulfillment. No aisles, like I mentioned, for space savings, full order consolidation at each port. So additional conveyance and sortation systems aren't required. You can discrete order pick a full order at each port, or you can batch pick and sort later if desired. Natural slotting. Fast moving bins always reside at the top. Slotting is performed automatically. As high movers are frequently picked, they stay near the top, allowing for quick retrieval of product and therefore fast item fulfillment times. There's no single point of failure. It's a fully redundant system. If there's a failure, operations can continue until service arrives after hours. Pick and replenish in parallel. There's no need to interrupt existing activities. You can pick and put from the same port. Flexibility, like I mentioned, great for low ceiling height facilities as well as tall, and can fit any facility or layout shape. Overall, a green solution. Battery-powered robots consume 60% less energy compared to other technologies, and this is important in back-of-store applications when current energy infrastructure may be limited. It's not a distribution center. Future-proof. Size and purchase for current needs. You can size and purchase for your current needs and expand your system as required. System extensions are able to be done without shutting down the current operations. An idea of a concept to give you a little bit more color. This is an in-store fulfillment concept solution that's ultimately looking at a grocery application, but the idea can be applied to various industry verticals. So let's take a look at this, the in-store operation on the bottom left. You can increase your display of products and reduce the need for aisles while increasing assortment and SKUs and quantities inside of the AutoStore. More SKUs in the customer experience space, spread out for decluttered, clean look with the inventory stored in the AutoStore. Remember that experience we talked about? That's what I'm focusing on here. Micro-fulfillment capabilities. So what does that mean? It means associates can consolidate e-com orders and decide to put them back in the system for customers to collect later. It's ultra high density. So I thought it would be helpful to give some rough sizing examples to articulate the SKU density you can get out of a back of store solution. A small system, we would say, would be anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 net bins. Those can be subdivided by a factor of several, and you can subdivide to 7,000 to potentially 9,000 SKU locations inside of those bins, depending on the quantity of SKUs you want to store. This footprint would be anywhere from 1,000 to 1,600 square feet. We've even put together concepts for solutions that are less than 1,000 square foot footprint. A medium system, anywhere from 5,500 to 6,500 net bins, could subdivide to 16 to 19,000 SKU locations. This would take up approximately 5 to 6,500 square feet. On a large system, 16,000 net bins. We'd subdivide those into potentially 49,000 SKU locations, and that could take anywhere up to 9,000 to 10,000 square feet. Still, overall, relatively small given the density of storage. Another concept, click and collect. So seamless pickup points to collect e-com orders in dedicated areas. You can collect the orders in just a few minutes. on or after hours. This gives customers an immense amount of flexibility. You can also place returns in the system. It's important to understand that as customers come back and they don't want to go potentially in the store for a return, they can drive right up to a port or walk up to a port to place a return if the customer desires. Curbside delivery and last mile. So customers can decide their preferred option to collect pre-picked, in-store, curbside, and it just gives the flexibility overall. And let's talk about the customer experience. So it's pretty neat. The ability to watch robots pick and place orders provides a pretty neat wow factor that differentiates an in-store shopping experience, driving customers in store for state-of-the-art shopping. So where is this taking place? Well, let's give you a case study for Best Buy. Best Buy was looking for a supply chain transformation throughout their fulfillment network to meet the increased customer demands discussed at the beginning of the presentation. They were looking to more efficiently support fulfillment to their stores, as well as provide free next-day delivery to customers in major urban metro areas. Working with Bastian Solutions, the strategy comprised of an 8-facility and 8 AutoStore implementation strategy. This was focused on RDCs for replenishment and Metropolitan E-commerce Centers, MECs, for local fulfillment. The MEC is essentially a large, dark store. No customers are inside, but it's fulfilling orders in a local urban area. Those dense urban areas are Chicago, LA, and New York. So let's talk a little bit more about the strategy. The 5 regional distribution centers. Large inbound shipments were broken down into individual items. Those are stored within the AutoStore and then strategically picked and shipped to Best Buy stores for efficient restocking. Items leaving the AutoStore that aren't destined for the store shelves or home delivery are fed to the Best Buy MECs. There are 3, like I mentioned, of those MECs in Chicago, LA, and New York. They're approximately 50,000 square foot each, and they have the ability to reach over 50 million people with free next day delivery. So that's a large dark store application. And from an AutoStore figure standpoint, just to give some scale, the RDCs had 195 robots, 150,000 bin locations, and the MEC large dark store has 73 robots and 30,000 bin locations. Overall, as I mentioned, this enabled free next day delivery to 50 million people across the US, increasing supply chain efficiencies. And also the segregated tote delivery allowed for easy store replenishment while saving time. So I'm going to take a minute to talk about future-proofing your back of store automation. As demands to reduce labor costs and improve efficiency and throughput will continue to increase, we need to look forward to future-proofing an automated AutoStore micro-fulfillment solution. The AutoStore picking ports allow for operators to be replaced with bin picking robots. So let me explain the concept a little further. As vision systems and artificial intelligence continue to improve, transforming a goods to person to a goods to robot system is a very real possibility. Some of the benefits of the robots include accuracy, reduced number of pickers to minimize COVID exposure, reduce labor costs, and the ability to pick over multiple shifts. So how does it work? So as AutoStore delivers a SKU supply tote, the vision system scans the tote to understand the available targets. Once the scan's complete, the algorithms determine the most pickable targets in the totes and provides the robot with coordinates of those targets. The end-of-arm tool then interacts with the products, and the robot places the object into the shipping tote or container. Bastian Solutions has these systems in place with customers today. So finally, a little more information on who we are, Bastian Solutions. As you look to solve your future omnichannel challenges, Bastian Solutions is ready to help you throughout the entire process, from concept to design to implementation and ongoing support. We have over 900 employees, approximately half are degreed engineers, with hundreds of suppliers and thousands of customers. We're part of Toyota Advanced Logistics and a top 3 material handling systems integrator in the US. Bastian is a mature AutoStore integrator with substantial experience. 33 site installs in North and South America, 2.6 million bins, 3,000 robots with over 617 ports installed. We are a forward-looking automation and innovation-driven organization with an understanding of industry trends and what technologies to consider for future-proofing your fulfillment needs and your strategy.
All right, thank you, Alex. We are now going to move on to the question and answer portion of our event. As a reminder, you can still ask a question at any time using the Q&A window on the right of your screen. Simply click the My Questions tab and type your question at the bottom of the window where it says Ask a Question. So I think we have about 3 that have come in so far. So I'll go ahead and ask you the first one here, Alex. What are the typical ROI drivers that you look at when you're making a business case for this type of automation?
Great question, Stephanie. Thanks. So there are multiple ROI drivers that will be considered, but I would say that the top three primarily would be focused on the speed and the ability to pick orders quickly, the space requirements and constraints. So being able to find the appropriate amount of space where you can put automation in a backup store or dark store is critical. And then overall, the labor reduction. So the ability to pick orders out of a system as opposed to taking the time to have order pickers go through the aisles of a store substantially reduces the overall labor cost. And so combining those three together usually provides a really favorable ROI.
All right, thank you. The next question is, what's the smallest you can build an AutoStore for micro-fulfillment?
Yeah, another good question. So I hit on it a little bit when I was talking about some rough sizing examples. And so we've put proposals together for very small systems in the 2,000 to 3,000 net bin range, which is about 1,000 to 1,600 square feet. But the system can actually scale down smaller than there. We could probably have a business case to make it slightly below 1,000 square feet and fit in really kind of odd shapes. If it gets too much smaller than that, then potentially there's not enough of a realization of storage density and space savings to potentially make it worthwhile. But the system can scale down to extremely small sizes.
All right, thank you. Next question, can the AutoStore also be used for processing returns?
Yes, I hinted at this briefly, but the ability to have an empty bin presentation come to a customer for a return is something we do on the replenishment side today in a typical AutoStore application. So having the ability to have an empty bin present itself to a customer-facing port, that customer could then enter their credentials and information, place the return in the bin, and that bin would then be taken back into the system. So the answer is yes.
Okay, and it looks like we've just got one more, I think. How long does it take to implement an AutoStore system?
Yeah, good question. So typically with a micro fulfillment solution that we're looking at here, it's very standardized from a hardware and a software standpoint. And so using standard functionality, we can typically go from purchase order to go live in approximately 14 weeks. Now, with larger AutoStore systems that potentially have more complexity and more interfacing with a larger system, those will take longer to implement. But specific to microfulfillment, if it's just a standalone AutoStore system, our implementation lead time is 14 weeks.
All right, thank you. Actually, we did have one more come in here. So first they said very good presentation. So I wanted to share that with you, Alex. And then the question, how would the AutoStore concept influence product packaging in terms of size, durability, and substrates being used?
I would say that on the inbound side, when the system has product that's being inducted, the system can fit, depending on the bin size, use multiple SKUs in different and various types of packaging. So depending on what type of material and content and SKUs you're putting into the system, you may not have to decant and break down tremendously. You may be able to leave most products in original packaging. What's unique and interesting about AutoStore is the storage and handling of the system is very graceful, so that I know AutoStore has run demos where they put a couple of flutes of champagne into a bin, into a replenishment port, stored in the system, have it picked by a robot, brought back down to a picking port, and the champagne hasn't tipped over. So the actual handling of the product is very gentle. But I would say in terms of maintaining product and package integrity, there's really no concerns. It's just whether or not a product has to be broken down from maybe a larger size into individual quantities.
All right, well, I believe that's all we have for today. So we would like to thank all of our attendees for their participation, and obviously to you, Alex, for a really great webinar and a very engaging Q&A session. If you would like to revisit any of the content from today or our other webcasts in the series, all 4 will be available on demand via the Bastian Solutions website. So thank you everyone for attending today's event and have a great afternoon.